Hello, my name is Bradley and I am a product person at CharlestonHacks. I'm a founder myself with over a decade in digital product management, and you may recognize me from running a workshop or being a judge at CharlestonHacks. I have put together this product basics workshop because there's a lot of advice that I give you during the hack that would have been much better for you to know before the hack. Before I start, there are plenty of reasons to attend a hackathon, like having fun, networking, being with the best people in the world, which is what we advertise. It is absolutely true. However, if you'd like to have something for your portfolio, or gain investment, this is the place to be, in addition to the other amazing things you can do at a hackathon, right? So, goals that we should achieve at the end of this workshop are maximizing our day one discovery, or the discovery process in general, gaining confidence with digital product basics, avoiding rookie mistakes, structuring a pitch, and anticipating judges' questions. I don't want our questions to be surprising for you. And then deciding what to do in the off season with your product, right? Because some of you may go into multiple iterations of the same, the same or of a similar idea that you've worked on before. So there's that. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. You can get this slide deck. While you're at it, feel free to add Charleston Hacks on LinkedIn. Amazing content. Please note that this slide deck is my own, which is to say I created it for me originally. Then I turned it into a startup toolkit. It's just gotten bigger and bigger over time. It's organized by theme. I can do workshops on any of these themes. If you see something that interests you, you can go ahead and ping Charleston Hacks on DevPost or wherever, and you can request a workshop in advance. But I'm going to blast through some of these concepts as quickly as I can, right? If you want to go in depth, you can either download the slide deck, not super useful without me, but feel free to do it. You're welcome to. Or I'll see you later. So I should also say that this is what I've learned from having incubated my own product and through years in product. Other folks might have a different way of going about it, but this is mine. So here we go. Excellent. So this is my LinkedIn QR code. Feel free to scan it. If you go into the About section of my LinkedIn, you can find this startup toolkit. It'll be in PDF form. So, the first thing to know about product is that there are 3 or 4 kinds of risk, right? Here we are. Here are the 4 big risks, and you can imagine that while you're pitching, I'll think about all of these, right? Here's a slightly more limited way to look at it. In this model, note that one member of the team, so coders, have ultimate responsibility for covering this risk, feasibility. Desirability, that's user experience, UI designers, that's them. I'm a product person, so my question, being the voice of the user, is, will users buy it, and do they want it? Is their desire? So that's product, right? Do they want it? Will they buy it? What does the user want? Feel free to read these articles if you'd like. There's a New York Times, there's the link here, New York Times or Harvard Business Review. So already on day one, I can tell, I shouldn't say I can tell a great team. I can tell a team that has a real possibility of getting a great product because I can see that folks are, so if you have 4 people, all 4 people are participating in discussion. I can look at their facial expressions and see that they're a little bit light, that they're having fun. And we call this rewarded vulnerability, right? You're not going to get punished for your ideas. Hold on, let me make this slightly smaller. Yeah, great. So moving on. There, as you think of your ideas, there are a ton of ways to try to achieve feasibility, desirability, and viability. I do workshops on this. You're welcome to schedule one or come to one. It's too long for this presentation now. Okay, so here's a thing that you can do in a hackathon during discovery, right? You could talk about user pain points. Excellent. You could think about their gains, the jobs that they normally do, what's the competition that they might use, digital or analog, or also just opting out because people are lazy. So this is a good place for discovery to be in. So my job as a product manager is a lot like this, right? So one rookie mistake would be you try to sell your product instead of the version of themselves that the user becomes once they consume the product, right? So, here's your user before they consume your product. Here's your user after they consume your product. And so what I'm wanting to hear in a pitch early on is something like a SuperMario statement. What does that statement look like? Here it is. Here's 5 ways to do it. It's a little bit like a Mad Lib. Feel free to just pick one of these and fill it out. If you can fill this out, you're in a really good place, right? After you go through the discovery process and you figure out what you're building, I need to be able to hear something like this. I would start your pitch off with it. So, what are some pitfalls? Bain's elements of value. It's this pyramid based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Here's an article. Feel free to read it. Here's a B2B version. Here's a B2C version. I'm bringing it up to make slightly different points. Bain might tell you that these features on the low end of the pyramid are also low value features, as in they don't create desire. I'll get there. What I want to point out is that at the top, we still have self-transcendence, which should look a lot like SuperMario. Who is the better version of themselves that the user becomes when they consume the product? Great. The point I want to make is some products are very strong in self-transcendence out of the gate, just in the idea stage. So an example of this would be a product that I think is called Be My Eyes. It helps blind people see. So if you are a non-sighted person, you use your smartphone to call a sighted person, and that person will help you do simple tasks like see if your bacon is expired or read 2 pill bottle labels if the pill bottles are the same size. So great. You can imagine that if I were a judge for this app, this is like winning the product lottery. Feasibility, desirability, viability. It's a super low lift app to create. The benefits are immense. The user is very clear and very specific. The use case is very clear and very specific. It is very clear to me who this user is without the product. It is a big win. A similar product for me in terms of strong out of the gate that we had at the hack was a product by a beekeeper for beekeepers, where they would put a piece of hardware in a hive, connect it up to a piece of software, and you would see the health of the hive, including moisture levels. So in this case, the person presenting at the hack was a subject matter expert, and so they were able to give me a real clear idea of who that user is, et cetera, use case, it's all there. Now, I'm making assumptions as a judge, because if we had longer than a hack, if we had dug into this problem for like a month or 2 months and done some discovery and some testing and some iteration, maybe we would have found that the hives could just be moved to a place with more humidity and that the hardware was never needed, right? So I am depending on some sense that the subject matter expert knows what they're talking about, but it's a win. It's very strong out of the gate because of the transcendent property of the idea. Now, in product, it is the exception and not the rule to run into a good idea. And your job in product is not to be an ideas person. It's to be a problems person. So if you're very into ideas and solutions, product may not be the place for you. If you're really into digging into problems, that's where we need to be. And that's where the craft of product comes in. We all cannot be so lucky, pardon me, as to have a Be My Eyes or a beekeeping idea out of the gate. The rule is something like more like this. So there is a feature that's got some press. I think it's in Deliveroo, but it's in a food delivery app where users were getting their food late and it was cold and they were upset because being hangry is no fun. So a typical product manager that thinks it's their job to come up with solutions, or maybe doesn't have resources or the ability to do a lot of discovery, might have said, all right, we'll make a pop-up. Your food is late, sorry. There we go. Bottom of the rung. And nobody cares if their app has an informs feature, right? It's like doesn't create desire in users. This product manager, who probably had was very clever and had a great product culture around them, took a few days off and went and shadowed the delivery people. These delivery people were in big cities with scooters and bikes, and a lot of congestion, traffic congestion. So the resulting feature was one where when your food was late, there would be a little map that would pop up. It would show your food delivery person like on a bike, and you'd get a little icon of them coming up a hill with like 15% wind resistance and some hail and some traffic. And this app is very lovable. It is an informs app, but it moves us further up the pyramid, right? Probably to affiliation and belonging, because when the hangry end user saw this feature, it reduced anxiety, it reduced anger, it increased empathy, it created a bond between them and the delivery person, and it increased tips and reduced complaints. So we've moved this right up the pyramid through craft. And we want to be focused on craft and not luck in product. I was doing a user interview a while back, and I asked somebody what their favorite company was, and this person said Dick's Sporting Goods, which I think of as a crazy boring company. And I said, why? And he said, well, they've got a great returns policy. And I'm like, all right, in my mind, I'm like, returns. That's right down here. It reduces cost. Not a common answer from a user, right? To get something down here. And I said, why is this returns policy so important to you? And he said, I volunteer at the local school, teaching basketball to kids. And we use these, we just like really punish all of our sports equipment. And in some real liberal amount of time at Dick's, I can take back all of this equipment and come back yearly with just like an entire shed full of new equipment for the kids. And I could see him get misty about it. I could see who he became, right? So we're moving this right up. I could see that he became a sports equipment Santa, basketball saint or something. So lots of companies make features down here. I am by no means saying never create these features. I'm saying let's add some craft. Let's try to move it up. The only way to do that is knowing your users, and being pretty specific about it, about their pain points. A typical thing that happens in a hackathon and in real life, but definitely in hackathons, might look something like this. All right. Hack team is thinking about general problems they can fix in life. And we're going to come up with something real generic, like loneliness. Okay. Somebody on the team will say something like, okay, let's create a loneliness app. So the problem is loneliness. The user is anyone who's lonely. And then they'd skip, in this hypothetical scenario that I'm laying out, they would skip any kind of research, any kind of discovery, any kind of testing, and they would move right into, well, let's create some like anti-loneliness features. I'm going to start creating these features. This feature list will be pretty long in this scenario. Like we'll do a connect you with friends feature, and then we'll integrate with like whatever other technology you have. We'll organize your friends. We'll make sure that you can meet up in a safe place. We'll simplify your friend list, like you could rate them after you meet these people that maybe live near you through some kind of mapping feature. So, you don't have to meet up with dud people repeatedly. I don't know. Great. So you come up with this whole list of features. I say you, I mean this hypothetical team that I'm talking about. After this, typically the team will come up with a really long list of features like, okay, we've got a connection feature and an integration feature. We'll find a ton of friends in your area. We'll integrate to every device you have, like your laptop, your Kindle, your Apple Watch. We'll organize your friend list. We'll find a safe place for you to meet so nobody knows your address. You can meet up at a local cafe. Maybe you can rate these interactions, and we'll simplify your friend list, etc., etc. This feature list could be pretty long. Long for me is anything longer than 3. Yeah. At a hackathon, it could be anything longer than 1 because the time's really compressed. So come up with this feature list. Then after that, there's like a list of reasons why the first list would be beneficial. So like, when you're not lonely, you have physical wellness, you have mental, there's like a therapeutic thing. Think about how much fun you'd have. Look at our great UI UX. And this kind of pitch might end up with an appeal for money, like, look, angel investor, since the user base is every lonely person in the world, you could be making billions and billions of dollars with this app. All right. This is what I might call a throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks kind of a pitch. Because it is so generic, it is covering a ton of ground, just way too much real estate. But apart from that, this is neither, I'm calling it luck, but like a strong out of the gate idea, right? It's neither strong out of the gate nor craft. It's, for me, spaghetti at a wall. There are so many questions that I would have after a pitch like this. Number one, if this is your edited list of features, what did you edit? Right? Because if you didn't edit anything, if there was no curation, that's a problem. Number two, like a list of benefits is not the way people consume things. We will get to this later, but I could give you a list of features that doesn't create desire for users. I know why people think it does, because Apple regularly comes out and announces like that they've just put in 200 new features into the new OS and people love it. But that's just Apple. That's the exception. That's not the rule. And I would challenge anyone who has seen a Tim Cook presentation to repeat one of the features on that list, or to tell me a time when they actually went and used one of the features on the list, right? Fine. The list of benefits, I can't be listed into desire any more than I can be featured into desire. But then I start to have really basic questions like, why isn't the user more specific? What's the use case? What are more specific pain points? And I won't say you can't win this way. I will say it's very, very, very hard. So what's the point? Product people are very into users. They're very into problems, more so into problems than into solutions. So in this kind of a pitch, I also wonder what the team thinks their job is, because it's not producing features and lists of benefits. Here's a slide I quite like. Here might be a place for you to start. I like this because it gives us the difference between market and product. If it were me, I might make a third category, which is marketing, market, and product. Lots of pitches just deal with market and marketing, right? Like, here's a market of lonely people. We will do some marketing to them for our 55 features, and magic will happen. I highly suggest that you do some research. Here's some things you could do. Here's some things to focus on and brainstorming. And let's carry on thinking about how you might want to research. Also with, you've got some brainstorming here that you can do with product. And here are some discovery research methods that are super cheap, and some of them are crazy fast. It's very typical, especially for academics, to tell me, oh, we need to test like a few hundred people or a few thousand people, like A/B testing. We just don't have that number of users yet. And, we'll test after we build some code, like a lot of code. We're going to build a lot of code, and then we're going to test in a statistically significant way. And although that is one way to do it, it's an expensive way to do it. And I encourage you in your off time to learn about quick and cheap discovery methods. I have stuck these into ChatGPT, and I have organized them according to how long they would take. It is possible that you could even come up with faster ways of doing this, about what these tests are good at doing. Even something as quick as looking at Google autocomplete or Google Trends, where you type in something and it comes up with what people typically search for, can give you a really, really good insight as to user desire, just even going out of the gate. What would I do in the first hour to 2 hours of discovery at a hackathon? Good question. The goal is to find out as much about typical user behavior and typical user pain points as quickly as possible. What can you leverage to do this? One example might be finding your competition and having members of the team silently go through, land on the homepage, and map out what they expected to find, and the various, like, let's say the first 5 tasks that they tried to complete by clicking on different pages and gauging expectations, right? So you're leveraging your competition to come to some findings. Of course, here there's the assumption that your team is your user, but it's quick to do. Another option would be to look at any kind of research around user behavior. So if you are an app that's coming up with a security solution for college students as they come home late at night in their neighborhoods, what can you tell me about their typical behavior around safety at night? So what might that tell you about pain points? So that would be something like searching public records. AI can be quite helpful in going through data quickly. Like a Google patent search, if you think that no one has ever come up with the idea that you've come up with, do a Google patent search. And often this is like a graveyard of things, both physical and digital, that people thought would be a great idea and it never worked out. Why? You can even look at the person that filed the patent and see what they've done afterwards. A quick search of like failed product around whatever space you're in will give you some other attempts that folks have tried. If you've got a social, an app with a social bent, so you're trying to get people to take the bus, we'll get to that later. Many governments have nudge units or social scientists that try to provide incentives for citizens to take a different action than they might otherwise. A good example of this is all of the messages and ugly, horrendous photos that you can find on cigarette packages in Europe. So if you want to get a citizen to not smoke and to take that action rather than smoking, what's effective? Is it text? Is it text and picture? So how big does the carrot or the stick have to be for people to change their behavior? That's an option. So all of these are options. Time with users is always a great idea. When these real users mirror your fictional user persona, these people are called reference customers or reference users. Steve Krug has some great videos that maybe I'll link to about how to interview reference customers. So if you're a student that has a product geared towards students and you happen to know 3 or 4 people you can call, it's a great idea. Maybe you could do a 15-minute lightning round and get some really great discovery about their typical behavior, past behavior, and the psychology around what you're trying to build. Non-digital products. So if you've got a great productivity feature that replaces copious amounts of paperwork, maybe take a look at what the real world version looks like for a user, what they love about it, what they hate about it. Again, kind of getting down to those pain points. But of course, the physical parallel doesn't necessarily have to be your real world competition. It could also be something else in the real world. You could look at analogous products. So if you were trying to get doctors to buy their own lead vests to avoid radiation, you could look at maybe police people buying their own bulletproof vests at a similar cost. and ask what's the psychology around that decision making. Let me be very clear when I say that looking at failed, let me go back to this other slide just so you see it. When I talk about looking at failed products, I am not asking you to look and say, oh, this has failed, let's not do it. I'm asking you to see why it failed, to dig into that research and find and not make the same mistake and maybe find a really successful path for your own product. So I'm essentially asking for critical thinking. Steve Krug also does some very good video tutorials on how to do user interviews. Those are completely worth it. And it is worth saying here that this involves a big slice of humble pie, like a little bit of your ego and your soul every time you test. Because quite often you have your heart set on something, or you're really sure that you're on the right track and you're not. So when I talked about psychological safety in teams early on, it might seem a little bit rah-rah or woo-woo or kumbaya or whatever thing. But the reason that we're looking for that kind of ethos and practice in an agile team is because there is so much rejection in agile. And I mean this in a nice way, because when it's glorious, it's glorious. But quite often, it's just not what you expected. And the team has to lift each other up because of the 18 hypotheses you had, one came out to be right. And that's great, because that's what you need to be developing. It would be a waste of money to develop the other things. Let me also be very clear about what I am advocating in terms of a hackathon. If you look at the hackathon as one sprint, right? So let's say a sprint is typically a week or 2 weeks, or maximum maybe even a month in a real environment. Maybe 3 days at a hackathon seems like a very short sprint. I would encourage you to test something on day one, right? I keep going on about reference users that mirror the personas that you have. But if you don't have a stand-in for a real user, use each other, right? Find out as many quick ways to do discovery as you can and try to iterate on day one so you can get closer to the problem. Before I move on to Agile and Waterfall, I'm going to give you one more tool. This is an Archetypes in product tool. It's a marketing tool, a branding tool, a UI UX tool. There are exercises around it that are a ton of fun. Because basically, if you figure out which one of these categories you fall into, you can leverage these companies' massive budget to do your own messaging and your own UI UX. It will not save you from bad product, right? Or lack of discovery. So I'm a little bit reticent to bring it up here, but I'm going to do it for this reason. So again, if you want a workshop about anything in the slide deck, give me a shout. However, the reason I'm bringing it up here is because you can see these 4 user needs: provide structure, connect to others, leave a mark, seek paradise. Sometimes this is like do something heavenly or otherworldly, or nostalgia, like paradise can be your past, your childhood, for example. In any case, every product you've ever loved using this framework has addressed one of these 4 needs. There are no other needs. These needs are subdivided so that there are only 12 kinds of companies in the entire world, and you can see them here. So why am I bringing this up? Right. This is a very typical problem at the hack, issue at the hack. It's very, very solvable. But let me tell you what can happen. So we had a team recently that came up with an app to incentivize people to take public transit. Now, they ended up doing quite well at the hack. But in the beginning, they had this long list of why users should want or would want to take a bus rather than driving. This list was maybe 12 or 13 items deep, and what it sounded like was this. Well, you can save the planet if you take public transit, right? You can meet people. Not only like on the bus, but like, you're going to meet people of a like mind, right? You don't have to drive, so, that frees you up. Anger came up quite a bit, like road rage or maybe angry driving. Just the frustration of driving and like having to pay for gas, right? You could save on gas. Fine. This is not only not the way that people consume products, but what's essentially happening here is that you are smashing all four of the user needs at once. And it's not a boiled down enough message for me as a judge to be convinced. If you have to smash all four buttons, something has gone wrong. Maybe you needed to do more discovery, but certainly even just from a messaging standpoint, I don't think users are going to be motivated. I think they're going to start overthinking long before they use your app, right? Because, well, I could get into it, but I won't. You want to give a user a real clear user need that you're solving. And you can think back to the pyramid that we just looked at. Like, I don't know where Dick's Sporting Goods is here, or Be My Eyes, or Deliveroo, but you can imagine where these companies would fall. And even if the features fall into different categories, the messaging for a user needs to be really, really boiled down, because you just don't have enough time to convince a user by smashing every single button on the panel, right, on the psychology panel. So yeah, we'll move on now to Agile and Waterfall. Again, if you want to do exercises on anything here in the entire slide deck, let me know. I can't emphasize enough that building lots and lots of features is a terrible idea. Just to really try to bring that point home, when you have features, every feature must be tested against every other feature. So you can see that when you get to 25 features, this is how many tests you need, right? And while I get that some software just by definition would need lots of features, like for example, like let's say tax filing software or compliance software, something like that, this testing budget would be bananas. So the more features you propose, the higher the price tag, even if you got every single feature right and it was super amazing and it solved a user problem. Let's make all of those assumptions, which are terrible assumptions to make. Your testing budget would be bananas. You can see that here, this graph tops out at 40 million tests. Because this number is so massive, this looks pretty flat in here, but it is still expensive to, once you get out to like 10, 15 features, it's expensive to test, which means if you don't test, you may have bugs and just like a terrible experience. So even if you're not worried about your testing budget, more features equals more complexity, equals a real drop in user experience. It's called experience rot. I know you've experienced that. I know you've experienced experience rot, because you're just in awash with mediocre features. Maybe if you give it enough time on the site or with the app, you get some payout, but fundamentally we don't have a lot of time with users. Per page, I think it's about 6 to 8 seconds. So you're also playing a game of beat the clock. We will get to lean in a second, but note that there are 7 kinds of waste if you're working in lean, which is a part of agile development. One of those is extra or not needed feature. So for folks who think that coming up with features is coming up with solutions and the job is to come up with solutions, what you may be doing is just coming up with waste. I said we'd talk about lean. Here we are. At this point, I feel a little bit like Schoolhouse Rock. If you haven't seen this, it's fine. The point of this cartoon, with very, very sticky music, it is an earworm, is that this prospective Bill thinks he's going to walk right up the steps and get past. But it's more complicated than that, it turns out. It's more of an agile process, as it were. So I'm here to tell you that the way that Bill thought it was going to go was waterfall. And some things do get produced in this way. So typical example is houses. So any process where one thing depends on another for the total thing to get completed. So to build a house, you have to build a foundation first, then walls, then a roof. Waterfall. I would argue with this, actually, but you could build software in the same way. This depends on a lot of assumptions. The assumption that the executives had good ideas that users wanted, that solved actual pain points. But you don't see discovery anywhere here. Fine. Here's your typical agile cycle. Lather, rinse, repeat. What we learn from this is that, again, it's a circle. We're going to test and review at the end here. Well, we're going to test in the middle. We're going to review. It's a process. That's fine. I would push back that what we are developing is necessarily code. This is a thing that some people think, that we're always testing code. You can test a lot of things. You can test a clickable prototype. Lots of the artifacts or just stuff we produce in the process is testable and reviewable. This is the first image I ever saw about product, and I am getting nostalgic looking at it now. So what I first understood about this is that you don't test in Waterfall. So the image above is Waterfall. You don't test, you don't get a full product, and at the end you get a happy consumer with a car. That may happen. It also may not, because if you haven't tested here, your user may not be happy, may or may not be a good car, and the market, because Waterfall is so slow, may have evolved past cars at this point. Fine. So this is Agile. What I understood about it originally was that you always get a usable thing, you always get to test a usable thing, you always get to show stakeholders and team members a usable thing, so it increases confidence in the process. You can imagine here, if this was a frowny face, how your stakeholders would feel if you'd gone through all of this and it turned out users didn't even want a car. And I understood about this agile lens that you get a car at the end, even if you start out with a skateboard. What I understand about this image now is that in Sprint 3, you might end up becoming a bike company. In Sprint 3, you might find out that people really like a motorized bike, and there is no guarantee you come out with a car at all, ever. If you are interested in more lenses through which to see Agile, I highly suggest this article, which is called "You Can't Make a Skateboard into a Car," in which we could view Agile through a sandcastle lens or a cake lens. or a Lego release train lens? This is also now the way that I understand Waterfall versus Agile. How much do you know about the problem? How much do you know about the solution? So, this is also something I think about in judging and is important in product in general. When we know a lot about the problem and a lot about the solution, we use Waterfall. Another way to see this is that they already iterated, right? Aviation, the military, hospitals, the Wright brothers crashed a few planes like a long time ago, and we figured out the problem and the solution. Fine. When we don't know a lot about the problem and the solution, we use lean. Definitely learn techniques with all of these flavors of Agile. You can start by reading the Lean Startup, which is where lots and lots of people, including me, started. Okay, it is important here to challenge assumptions when you're thinking about your problem and your solution. Subject matter experts start with an advantage, but of course, if you can't skip discovery. You still have to do discovery and verify your assumptions. Even if your starting point as a subject matter expert, you might be a little bit ahead of the curve. If you haven't read the Agile Manifesto, then I suggest doing it. It's super short, it's at this website, and it is very retro. Moving on to Kano modeling. Right, so Kano was a person. He said that there are these 4 kinds of features in any product, digital or not, digital or analog. And you can see here's some diagrams here. Here we have expected features. Let me find an airline that's here's a better Kano model. So these are delighter features or excitement attributes. In software, we tend to only think about features as attributes, but of course, I think any web page, even basic HTML, can be an attribute. So even like an information page or an alumni page on a university website could be an attribute. So yeah, as you look at attributes, you see the excitement attributes, performance attributes, so more is more, and expected attributes or features. The important thing that Kano said that's important for now, again, I'm happy to do a workshop on this, is that users cannot tell you in any kind of market surveys what their expectations are. If you do market survey of prospective airline travelers, no one will tell you they want it to depart on time, arrive on time, or have your luggage not damaged, right? So when you don't reach users' expectations, it is very, very serious in product. This is part of the reason why listening to what people say they want is a terrible idea. Even if they could correctly guess what they would use or do, think about how many times you've made a New Year's resolution and then not followed through. So they might be able to tell you something like this, and this has been verified and validated that this is what users want in an airline. Or this. They can't tell you this. So this is something you have to work out on your own. I'm happy to help you do it. Once you come up with ideas, feel free to come find me and we will work on it together. Okay, there is another problem with Kano modeling, or something that's worth considering, which is in pitches, people generally come up with these massive user bases, like my product is for everyone who eats food or everyone who buys plants or whatever. The idea, I think, is that you're going to secure more funding by having this massive market. The question that I will be asking myself is, does every user in this market have the same Kano needs? The answer is usually no. Like, if it's all nurses, do nighttime nurses have the same needs as daytime nurses? Do emergency room nurses have the same needs as nurses in maybe a slower kind of an environment? What about rural and urban, etc., etc.? There are times where a product starts out in a certain way and finds a bigger user base. For example, universal design, human-centered design. The OXO vegetable peeler that has the chunky handle was invented for older people who have problems gripping. Turns out everyone loves them. Great. There are also examples where pain points are guaranteed, so a reliable number of people are colorblind in this world. A reliable number of people lose the ability to read small print after, let's say, 45 or 50 years old. Fine. In an airline, you have the advantage that your user is trapped for let's say 3 to 8 to 12 hours. So you can afford for them to be let down somewhere here. In a digital product, that is not the case. Your time is very, very constricted to seconds, if not less. So this expectation bar is more important in digital product. I love Kano, as I'm sure you can tell. Let me give you some Kano for other products. I love Kano for physical products, for experiences, for digital products, especially for luxury products where these, there can be hundreds and hundreds of points on a Kano model for a luxury product. I love Kano variants like the Osgood semantic profile. And if you're wondering how to build a Kano model and verify it and validate it, and can you use AI to make a Kano model? The answer is yes, with limitations. Definitely book a workshop. It is important to know that there are drawbacks to Kano. In fact, there are drawbacks to all of the models and frameworks that I've given you. Let me find the slide I need. Yeah, there's lots of things that are outside of the scope of this presentation. Stakeholder management, for example. Prioritization techniques also. Every technique has limits. Here are the limits of Kano. And I'm just going to go through these slides. You're welcome to screenshot them if you'd like. If you download the PDF, you'll also get the source material and footnotes. The video cuts off the footnotes here. And here are some bad ways to prioritize. And now it is time for user personas. Okay. On to user personas. A user persona is a composite, an imaginary example of a real user. It is a tool that you can use. I would expect to have at least one in a pitch. 2, if your user and your buyer is a different person, or maybe you've got a multi-sided user base where you've got 2 different users. You can imagine an app where a hospital is the buyer, a doctor uses it, and a patient uses it. That's a minimum of 3 personas. What you pitch is up to you, by the way. That's how you use your time, but expect questions on at a minimum of 3. Of course, you could have different kinds of doctor users, different kinds of user patients, and different kinds of hospitals, and at that point it gets very, very complicated. Here's a user persona that I don't love. Well, I love some of it. I don't love the picture for internal use. Know when you use a picture that your team internally will start to think about the user as this dude. I like the needs, the wants, if this is just stuff he's reported, not ideal. Frustrations, love that. Favorite brands or apps, this whole section here looks pretty, but it doesn't tell me what he's using this tech to do, what pain points he's solving with social media, what he likes about it, what his typical behavior is. These apps have a lot of functionality. Like when you tell me someone uses Amazon to do what? To watch videos? To buy books? For what? Bio, yeah, this looks more marketing oriented to me than product. Here's some other options. I do like thinking about what device people will be viewing you on. Hobbies, I don't know. We need to get to expectations, pain points, and behavior, past behavior, as quickly as possible for me. I like this, actually. The point is that the team feels empathy for the user. I could live without the pink, but these frustrations, we're somewhere close to a pain point. That sounds like a winner. And the pressures that she's got in life, like legal department deadlines, that sounds delightful. The easiest way to create a user persona is with an empathy map. You could also use jobs to be done. Definitely research this on your own and then try to complete this. I would definitely do this. I would also think about learning something about user stories. User stories are a tool that you develop with other members of a team. Learn how to do this, watch some YouTube videos on it. It is a way to leverage your team and also to get alignment on who your user is. Love this. Love all of this. So A+ on this kind of work. By the time you get to a pitch, you will likely have to put a picture on it, and Chuck can't just be any Chuck. He'll likely have to have a photo. But once you have a photo, you've got gender, race, and age in there, which tends to make you make assumptions about your user, and you start getting away from pain points. For user stories, Jeff Patton is a great person to follow, not only his book, but also all of his content. Customer journey mapping, happy to go through this in a workshop if you need to, but you can see here that this is an experience. In a website, it would be something like task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4, task 5. This is 0, just as like neutral reaction to the website. This would be something like dissatisfaction, satisfaction, and you can measure people's reaction as they experience or complete tasks. We can see that here, cold, confined, closing. This for me goes along with Kano because these are the expectations. As you look at dissatisfaction, you expect your Starbucks to be open, both like physically open and open in the sense of not confined, and you want it to be the right temperature, right? I'm surprised that fake greeting does not come down here, but hey ho. Welcome to a product adoption bell curve. It will be your friend, I promise. So let's say that you have decided to make a product for people with lips, or people who eat food, or people who use pens, and you've like prepared your presentation about it, and like the market is massive for all of those things, and you're very, very excited, and you're working under the assumption that you're going to release this product to everybody in that market, and you're just going to market the heck out of it. You're going to do some like social media stuff, and it's going to be great, like some SEO optimization, and you are on your way, right? Wrong. So the adoption life cycle says that you need to reach this tipping point here before the product starts to gain momentum and take off on its own. Note that everyone in the adoption profile has there's a psychology to it. So if you're standing in front of me at a hackathon, I can assume you're an innovator. And when you tell me that everyone is like you love it, you speak for your market, I may be thinking, well, you're part of the 2.5%. So look at these people. We're looking at creators, technologists, innovators. Once we get to 13.5, like this group here, so once we get past the 2.5, we're looking at visionaries and early adopters. And the thinking goes that the less cool people, or more conservative people, look back, and once there's social proof that a thing works, then everyone starts using it. So although you could have multiple user personas here or here or here or here, I'm looking just to hear about the most promising one in a pitch, unless you have a different buyer and user. And so I'm hoping that your user persona that you're working on is this person here. As a quick aside, it doesn't really matter what I think of your product. What matters is the craft and the validation. And the early adopter, identifying an early adopter really, really helps with this. So I was going to take a look at some failed tech products to let you have a laugh, but because that seemed a little bit judgy, I'll give you some failed real life products, like the Cheetos lip balm. And the early adopter for this was girls 8 to 14. There are certainly a ton of lip balms with wacky flavors. Don't know why this one didn't take off, but there you go. The lady pen. The market is all ladies. We really needed an early adopter lady group here that would have been interested in this item. Or funky purple ketchup. I'm going to go with ketchup. This may have been a winner with parents if there were enough vegetables in there. When I didn't live in the United States and I'd come to visit, I owned one of these, and it was just text and email, and it was delightful. It was like $8 a month. I remember the early adopters for this product. It was deaf people and expats. And then theoretically, the world was supposed to see how much they were wasting on cell phones and follow those early adopters. It did not happen. So how can I use this? Good question. As you plan out pricing or market strategy, for me, and this is just a personal opinion, you could try to game out who all of these people are over time and do like a 5-year plan. Tech is so compressed, time is so compressed in tech that I don't know that I'd believe a 5-year plan. And if you told me who your late majority is, I don't know that I would believe you. You might have it right, you might not, I don't know. You could find me like a 34-year-old woman who would use Cheetos lip balm after they had the social proof. I don't know. I think the most important people for me are to identify your early adopters. You might have a few personas for this, or an early and then an early majority. But after that, there's a lot to consider. I'm not going to go through it here. You can look at these articles. You can see here that, most people struggle here, and that's why it's important. You can combine that curve with other curves, like a social hype curve. The trough of disillusionment sounds a little bit like something from The Princess Bride. You've got your bowling alley, your tornado, hype cycles for markets, pricing strategies for every single part of the adoption curve. And important for some of you who are in products with a lot of R&D. This article is amazing. There's a video that goes with it. Please watch. But basically, the point the author is making is that expensive technology needs to come down in price before we could even find an early adopter. It has to be cheap enough for an early adopter to want it, right? And then he combines the curve with other curves, like you got your R&D, your startups, venture capital. But any way you slice it, even without R&D, in a pitch, I'm hoping that I'm finding you right here. I'm hoping you've got really great product skills. If I wrote you a big fat check, I could trust you to test and iterate without me hovering over you, and that I am catching a great company with a great product that solves problems right here, so that I can be there as we go up the curve. Pitching for hackathon purposes. It all comes down to this. Doug once said that it was his job to give customers certainty in their decision. I would say this is the same goal for a pitch. You can end with lots of things like hope or big numbers or a massive market. Fine. Let's start with certainty. Good product craft. So this is my taste in pitches. You will not be penalized for organizing your pitch in any way you'd like. I am trying to make it as easy for you as possible. In my opinion, a great pitch establishes market fit in minutes 1 to 2. In minutes 1 to 2, I should have the answers to: do users want it? Will they buy it? Will they use it? For me, these are mandatory elements. If you get follow-up questions on these elements, it's not ideal. If you get follow-up questions on these elements, it is more ideal. So I am suggesting a kind of a format and a flow of where you'll want to start and how you can move forward. Do not follow my slides. They are crazy ugly because in this fake hackathon that I am participating in, I have a fake partner, and that partner is ChatGPT. We have done this in 25 minutes, and I'm going to bring it home with this presentation, hopefully. So I would start with a value proposition statement. I would probably start with this one because this is the one that talks about the competition, right? So I start out with a value proposition statement. I just read this one off. Clearly, I don't read off 5. I've just given you a range. After the value proposition statement, I introduce you to my user persona. I have planned, this is Alex. He is 28. He's a software developer. He's super lovable. Feel free to throw whatever you want in about Alex that makes him lovable. I would also, because I'm me, I would also throw in here that he's like a PhD student, or he attends a lot of social gatherings for devs, because I'm going to try to head off the question, where will he find this app, right? That's optional. After I introduce you to super lovable Alex, who is an early adopter, I'm going to talk about his pain points, and here they are. I might talk about the experience that he has right now with dating apps, with dating in general. Great. So we have these pain points that are clear. We have kind of a typical experience, which is clear. And then I am going to tell you that Automate, our app, is going to solve all of this. Now, I need to tee up a use case. So a use case is it's a story, but it's also not. It's a typical situation in which Alex is going to use this app. It's like context. Find a use case. So like the most compelling use case and then the most compelling user. So it is Monday night and Alex would like to find a date for Friday, but he's like, whatever, PhD student, adjunct professor, software developer, and he's only had like 4 hours of sleep. He is time poor, but he wants a lasting relationship. He doesn't want to have to explain what autism is. If you were listening to this and you are on the autism spectrum, I am so sorry. Please find me at a hackathon and school me. I always like to learn. However, back to Alex. Alex would like to find a quiet environment and a date for Friday night. So that's the use case. So I might get more into that use case and what he's experiencing, right? Just look up use cases on Google and you'll come up with some good ones. After the use case, I'm going to say, all right, so we've teed up a situation in which Alex would want to use this app, and here's the journey for the product. Let's say you don't have a full journey. You might have a feature, just one. Like hopefully an important feature, like not login. Hopefully you've dedicated your time to something that's important for Alex, like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6. How much time did you have? I don't know. It's up to you. Maybe you didn't have a feature. Maybe you had a clickable prototype. Fine. If you're a UI UX person, you have a Figma prototype. Great. Whatever your deliverable is, you don't have to have all this, but you can just say, look, this is what a journey might look like, and our team is just focused on browsing matches. Fine. And then here you would have an actual demo. This is where you'd have your demo. So insert demo here. And so I've teed it all up. I might return to the USPs and really sell those. And then it would be time to talk about math normally. I mean, you could kind of go where you wanted from here. Eventually, you're probably going to get to math. However, let me pause to talk about some common pitfalls. Most people close out with some kind of math. This is the kind of math that I typically see. Let me tell you what I find convincing and not. This global bit, I don't find convincing because I would have to believe that my US users of Automate have the same needs as the global users of Automate, and I don't believe that their Kano models would be the same, right? In fact, I believe likely that global users would have a more complicated or a different Kano model. To be clear, I am not saying that people in the rest of the world are not on the autism spectrum. Again, worldwide, I'm not super convinced. I like this number here. This is great, but it doesn't leverage any information about Bumble and Hinge, either their success or their failure. Don't really care. My app is specifically made for people that are seeking lasting love. We'll get to that in a minute. Yeah, these numbers that are way out here in the future, just so you know, time is so compressed in tech that a forecast 4 or 5 years out in the future, I find a little bit unbelievable. Okay, here's some more data that I typically see in pitches. Love this, but we don't leverage any information about how particularly Bumble and Hinge or niche apps, how they grew, how they made it to where they are, what their pricing looks like, where they failed, where we might be in the market in relationship to these apps. This is a little bit meh. Okay, here's some more information that is also a little bit neither here nor there. I would need to know how many of these, what subgroup of this looks like Alex. This number is coming a little bit from nowhere. How do we know that this is the threshold for a subscription fee? Meh. Here's a typical thing to show an investor that the market is just ginormous, like especially this one here. This to me it's a little bit of a fantasy number. Again, I don't mind any of this data, but I wouldn't lead with it. Again, my goal here is to lead with credible math and move to less credible math. If you like this data, throw it in. I'm going to show you how I would do it. Okay, in an effort to give the most credible numbers I can, I'm going to use the adoption curve to try to create two sets of numbers. Again, I'm going to start with these as credible numbers. After that, if you like this, use it. If you don't. And if you can also start from here and then go anywhere you'd like to. But this is where I would start. I either need to figure out what this entire market looks like, or I can figure out what the early adopters look like. So I'm going to start by trying to figure out what 100% of my market is. I take the number from a few slides ago, 26.6 million dating app users in the United States. I figure out what percentage is looking for a serious relationship. That's 14.1 million people. I'm working with an autism prevalence rate, and I'm working from users that are midpoint or higher on that spectrum, because I want to really focus on people that have the pain points we've discussed. And here we are. And we are talking about the United States only. Fine. I've got us to 211,000 users, more or less. What does that mean in cash, right? So I've assumed, an average subscription price here for Bumble or Hinge, because I know people are willing to pay that given their past behavior. And I've come up with $23 million, right? I've also included that we know from Bumble and Hinge that users typically only subscribe for about 3 to 6 months. So there's my 100%. I think I've tried here to include users that have ADHD. I've tried to find somebody that has like another cohort that has similar pain points. If you love it, great. If you don't, great. But you see what I'm trying to do. So our actual possible market with this technique is $23 million, give or take, all of it. Well, I know what share of that is early adopters. I don't know who they are. I could continue down this path to figure it out, but that for me is a credible number for this product. Yep. Ideally, I would also say where people would find the app, but I'll get there. Or I could work from the inside out, trying to find these users here. So if I did that, the math is slightly simpler. We start again with that 26.6 million dating app users. I'm now going to float where I would find these users or where they're going to find the app. I'm going to advertise at their master's or PhD program. Similarly, instead of being a master's or PhD student, I could say that Alex is a developer. And so there's coding clubs and coding groups and any number of ways that I could reach devs in their native habitats. But it's always good to say where people are going to find the app before they adopt. I'm calling this 3 million people now. And you can see that I'm still focused on people looking for a serious relationship. And I'm coming up with numbers. Again, we're using that average price from Bumble and Hinge with this average duration here, subscription duration. And so my number of users here is about 83,000 at $7 million, 7.5 million. And there they are, right here. $7.5 million. And then I could work out the rest. Then I could suggest who an early majority is. I don't know that I care about a late majority or a late mass. After this, you could totally throw the kitchen sink at it, throw global numbers, like go moonshot, that's fine. It's just not the way I would start. As I close out about product math, let me make a few things super, super clear. I am asking you to start with credible math. You can use outside in, you can use inside out, you can use neither. But let's start with something credible where there's some product sense to what I'm saying. If you use either of these, be prepared for questions. So no math will get you out of judges' questions or investor questions. If I figure out the whole pie, outside in, some questions I might anticipate would be, why just the USA? Why not the USA and Canada? How do you know this is 100%? Fine. Okay, if this is 100%, how are people going to find the app? So you just generally advertise to the world, who are your early adopters? And I could make a case that I am just going to advertise to as many people looking for lasting love who I believe may be on the autism spectrum through whatever marketing channels, and I am going to identify a clear set of early adopters in month 1 or month 2 or month 3, and that's perfect. Well, it's more perfect than the alternative, than starting with non-credible numbers. So you will always have questions. If I start inside out, so I've identified these folks, which is my preference. The question then is, what is the whole pie? How fast are you going to grow? Who are these people then? Who is the early majority that looks back at the social proof and decides to start using and adopting this product? And when will that happen? Fine. Better question than the alternatives. You might get a question about, do you have more early adopters? Is Alex your only early adopter? How are you sure that he's your early adopter? Great, great, and great. The math that I have given you is a start in either direction. Feel free to develop it as you see fit. There is a third choice. And this third choice is your early adopter is one golden goose, and that's a buyer. So let's say you work at MUSC, Medical University of South Carolina, for people that are not local to the area. It's got massive infrastructure in the whole state, and this buyer is going to buy for all paramedics. You've got a great relationship. Super. This makes the math super, super easy. We know how many paramedics are in the MUSC system. We know the reach. We may know the range that the buyer is prepared to offer up for this product, let's say in year 1 or 6-month range. I don't know. It's up to you. This makes math super easy. The problem with this is very often this golden goose stakeholder does not really know what a Kano model or what needs, wants, and desires. They don't have a clear bead on that for the people actually using the software. And for as many, if I had a dime for every time someone told me they have to use it, the hospital is buying it, or whatever, the government's buying it, I would be a millionaire. That is absolutely not the case. Someone giving an app to you and requiring you to use it is not a recipe for success. I would still, if it were my pitch, be prepared for what makes this product lovable, delightful, SuperMario, USPs, value proposition statement, pain points, the whole bit for the actual users. Right? Because you can imagine how cheesed off that one golden goose stakeholder will be if no one adopts. So I would have in mind a set of early adopter users, even if they are not paying for the product, and an adoption strategy and Kano models for the end user, even if they're not the buyer. From this point, you could take the math to other hospital systems, right? Maybe in North Carolina or surrounding or hospital systems that are similar to MUSC in whatever way. So I am asking you, in any case that you pick, outside in, inside out, golden goose, if we want to call it that, develop the math and anticipate questions as you see fit, but start with credible numbers. Again, if you have a multi-sided user base, so let's say MUSC is buying for doctors and patients, and maybe neither of them have to pay money to use this app, great. You launch, I'm still expecting to know who the early adopters and innovators are. That would be a follow-up question that I would ask. All right, that ends this presentation. Okay. People at the Hacks often ask me who to follow and who to read. I would start with any of these books. Not only books, I know some people are not book people. All of these authors have a following. They produce short form journalism, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff. If you put in some of these titles into Google, PDF copies appear. But these are great people to follow. Especially Nielsen Norman, absolutely amazing. I branch out into some design UX books. Just Enough Research is absolutely an arsenal for discovery. Conversational design, it is worth noting, because we've just talked about product and pitching, that the kinds of pitches to investors and to judges that I see get repeated in a weird way on actual homepages. So no, you can't data people into using your product from the homepage. You can't, this is a great idea, or look at the social good, them into using your product. That's more or less what conversational design is about. You are having a conversation with your user. Another classic of this genre is a book called Letting Go of the Words by Ginny Reddish. It is a classic. I also recommend highly the publishers. O'Reilly is amazing. If you're looking for some UI UX inspiration, you're just like wireframing and you're thinking about great UI UX, here are some sites to do that on. Some of them are even updated daily. If you're not a coding person, here are some coding courses. Amin at CharlestonHacks really likes Odin. I've gotten quite a bit out of all of these courses. And here's some project management and design online as well. And that wraps up this presentation. I hope it was useful.